Namaste to one and all present here. I, Pranav, a student of IIT Madras, on behalf of the Vande Mataram family, welcome our chief guest of the day, Professor Vasant Shinde, respected faculty members and students, to the 7th annual Shri Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay Memorial Lecture. Before we begin the event, I would like to invite the chief guest and the professor to light the lamp. Thank you, respected chief guests and professors. In 2017, we started an annual lecture series titled Shri Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay Memorial Lecture, usually conducted at the end of even semesters. The last few lectures include Rediscovering India through the gaze of foreigners, travelers and Orientalists, delivered by Dr. Meenakshi Jain, Reimagining Indian History, Challenges and Opportunities, delivered by Dr. Vikram Sampath, and What Ails the Indian Education System and the NEP by Professor Kapil Kapoor. Today we are honoured to have Professor Vasant Shinde to deliver the 7th annual lecture titled Evolution of Indian Knowledge Systems, an Archaeological Perspective. Vande Mataram, our national song written by Shri Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, embodies the historical cultural legacy of our nation. Our national song has an inherent nature which facilitates every Bharatiya to visualize and bow down in reverence to the divine maternal Bharat Mata and inspires everyone to perform their national duty. It has played a pivotal role in the Indian independence movement, an ode to the mother goddess, as it was written in the novel Anand Mat, was a homage to the mother and the motherland. We have been proudly following the tradition of singing the national song Vande Mataram at the beginning of every lecture. Therefore, I request everyone to join Divya ji in singing our national song.
Karam. Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Sujalam Sufalam, Malayaj Sitalam, Sasya Syamalam Mataram, Vande Mataram, Shubhra Jyotsna Pulakitayaminim, Pullakusumita Drumadala Shobhinim, Suhasinim, Sumadura Bhashinim, Sukadam Varadam Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram. Thank you.
Vyaji, the Vande Mataram Forum at IIT Madras aspires to take initiatives that introduce and sensitize the student community about Bharat's rich cultural, economic, socio-political, scientific and technological heritage, its ramifications today and the thoughts about the roadmap ahead. The sloka from Ramayana, Janani Janmabhumischa Swargadapi Gariyasi, which means that mother and motherland are superior to heaven, is the philosophy that has kept us going ahead for the last 7 years in this institute and strengthened our national consciousness. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome once again our guest speaker, Professor Vasant Shinde, to this event. I request Professor Aditya Kolachana sir to welcome our guest by presenting him with a fruit basket. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the speaker for today, Professor Vasant Shinde, former professor and Vice-Chancellor at the Deccan College, Postgraduate and Research University, Deemed University Pune, and Founding Director General, National Maritime Heritage Complex, Adjunct Professor at the National Institute of Advanced Studies, IIC Campus, Bangalore, and Director of Rakhigarhi Research Project. Is a world-renowned archaeologist and one of the foremost scholars in South Asia. Professor Shinde has been a pioneer in archaeological research since the last 43 years, specializing in the Protohistory of South Asia, Maritime History, as well as Field Archaeology. He has completed 16 major research projects, in the process of which he has collaborated with scholars and institutes from around the world, such as the Universities of Pennsylvania and Wisconsin in the United States of America, to Cambridge and Oxford Universities in the United Kingdom, and the International Research Center for Japanese Studies and Research Institute for Humanities and Nature, and the Seoul National University College of Medicine, South Korea. He currently works at CSIR, where he works on understanding the genesis of basic sciences and technologies through archaeological sources. We are grateful to have with us such an esteemed scholar and look forward to learning more about our culture and civilization from your talk. We welcome you, sir.
Vanakkam, Namaste, the faculty and the students of the IIT Madras. I am extremely happy to be here, and I take this opportunity to thank this Vande Mataram organization, particularly Jiva and his colleagues who have organized this lecture here. This is an honor for me. Friends, I am going to speak about the Indian knowledge system, which is based on archaeological evidence that number of archaeologists have excavated, and I have also excavated in different parts of the country. You know that India was considered as the Sone ki Chidiya, which was the most prosperous country in fact in the world, and that was possible because India had very robust Indian knowledge system, and because of this India could achieve economically and politically in the world. This Indian knowledge system is very old. In fact, it was initiated maybe around 7000 BCE when the agriculture was introduced in the Indian subcontinent, and this there was a consistent development in the technology that were used for various products. So by maybe middle of the 3rd millennium BC, maybe around 2600 BCE, these technologies were perfected. They were fully developed by the Harappans, and interestingly, these technologies are continuing till today. There are a lot of communities in South Asia who are still using this knowledge system, which is certainly 5000 years old. And the Harappans are very important because they are considered to be the founders of Indian culture, because most of the traditions and knowledge system, even the cultural elements introduced by the Harappans, they are being used in major part of South Asia. So I consider Harappans as the founders of the Indian culture, and the knowledge that was created by the Harappans was so relevant. Even today, it is found to be relevant, and because of that, this knowledge is being used in various parts of South Asia. Now, this knowledge system, certainly based on our research, was developed by the indigenous people. I'm going to talk about that. But as far as the Indian knowledge system is concerned, we have two sources available. One is textual source, and the other one is archaeological source. We have textual sources maybe right from the Rigvedic period, but the problem with the early texts is that there is we still are not able to date those early texts properly, and because of that, in spite of the fact that there is a lot of maybe plethora of knowledge available in those texts, sometimes we are not able to use. But we also have very strong archaeological sources now, and I am going to speak about the archaeological sources that are available in the Indian subcontinent. And the history of the Indian subcontinent begins around maybe 2 million years, that is 20 lakh years ago. A number of recently Stone Age sites have been excavated in some parts of southern part of India and also in the middle part of India, and the dates are being pushed back to almost 20 lakh years. So from 20 lakhs to till the present, there is a continuity, and India is one of the rare countries in the world where one can see such a continuity for almost 2 million years. So there is no gap, as was thought earlier in the history of South Asia. So we are proud of our culture and of our long tradition. This chart gives you idea about the cultural sequence during the Stone Age period, starting from 20 lakhs, and of course
in this also you can see some of the earlier stone tools, and it is believed that the person who or the people who devised the stone tools, they were best technicians, because these tools were devised for facilitating their maybe subsistence activities, and they had devised that. And there is a gradual growth, of course, gradual change in the technology because of the change in the ecological condition, etc. So maybe at some stage you find small tools, but we don't have much information about this particular culture. We don't have much information about the people of this particular early stage, because one hypothesis that most of the Stone Age people, but rather Stone Age culture, evolved in Africa, and the people started dispersing in different parts of the world, and probably they came to India. That is one hypothesis, and this is an old hypothesis, because after that not much work has been done, because when this particular hypothesis was developed, that time the date of the beginning of the Stone Age in this part of the world was around 5 lakh years. But now with new research, the dates are going back, and now I think the earlier hypothesis may be challenged now, and there is a possibility that maybe there is independent origin in this part also, in different parts of the world, and maybe India also had one of the important centers. Then this life change, in fact, once the monsoon system became very active, maybe around 14,000, 13,000 years ago, and then of course it impacted the life of the people. And then, of course, people started settling at one place. There's a beginning of agriculture, domestication happening around 7,000 BCE in the Indian subcontinent. And then, from 7,000, once people started settling, then there is a gradual growth. And that growth is documented now in the archaeological data, particularly at the site of Rakhigarhi, which we have excavated for so many years. And from this period onward, now at least we have fairly good idea about the people who started this agricultural system in this part, who were gradually evolving, and the people who developed the first cities in this part of the world. So this chronological chart you can see how the development was happening. The early development mostly happened in the northwest part of the Indian subcontinent because this region is ideal, good, lot of water, then natural resources required for the people. And in this area, in the Kutchi plain, in the Baluchistan area, one site was excavated, that is the site called Mehergarh. Now this site was excavated by French scholars. Now what you are seeing in fact here is a mound in fact. This is how the ancient sites look like in the form of mounds. And also because of the internal process, the color of the soil becomes whitish. So archaeologists, in a way, when we set out for the discovery of the site, when we locate the whitish mound from a distance, we know that this is the ancient site. And then of course we pick up some objects lying on the surface. And now we are in a position to date, in fact, even without the excavation of the site, we can properly date the site because we get some potsherds and other material. So here, this particular site was excavated. They found the beginning of agriculture at the base level, and in the gradual, in the earlier levels, later levels, they found proper evidence about the gradual growth. So the same people ultimately at some stage became the Harappans, and the Harappan culture evolved, in fact, from Harappan culture to Harappan civilization at one stage. And during the Harappan civilization phase, in fact, most of the basic knowledge and the technologies were perfected. So we have in this particular, in the earliest level, the evidence of the domestication of plant in the form of these seeds of barley and wheat, and also the evidence of the animals. Cattle was the first animal to be domesticated, then sheep and goat, and even pigs. So we have strong evidence. And then of course these are the early crafts. This is the part of the maybe ornaments that these people made, and they started developing the basic technology for manufacturing these ornaments. So this is the early stage, and most of the ornaments are found in the burials. Right from the beginning of the settled life in the Indian subcontinent, people have started burying the dead bodies ceremoniously. In the early stage, during this particular stage, they buried the dead bodies within the settlement, either below the living floor or in the courtyard. And probably they believed in fact in second life, because of which they also buried along with the dead bodies maybe some food and ornaments also, and we have the evidence of that. So most of the evidence for the craft comes from this particular burial system. Right from the early stage, these people had started developing contact with different regions. Now what you are seeing here, we have some material from the Karachi coast, which is roughly maybe 900 kilometers away from this particular site. And then also we have some material coming from Oman coast. So that indicates that right from the beginning of settled life, people have started crossing seas and they started establishing contact. And this is very well reflected in the genetic studies also, not only in the archaeological data. So the movement was happening right from the beginning. Then they started developing basic craft like pottery making, etc. So this is the early stage we have. What is interesting that we find in the early stage when the Harappan culture was developed. This is the region where the Harappan culture developed. Some part of that lies in Pakistan, particularly Punjab province of Pakistan and Sindh province of Pakistan. And the major portion of this culture lies in India. Right from Jammu down south up to Maharashtra, we find sites in this particular region. So in the early stage, which is now dated to 6000, beginning of the early stage goes back to 6000 BCE. So from 6000 BC to 2000 BC or 2500 BC, we can see the gradual growth and the evolution of the basic technologies. But in the early stage now we find number of what we call as the regional cultures. And these regional cultures could be identified on the basis of the painted pottery, the painted ceramic that was produced by the different cultures. That varies from culture to culture on account of the technology, on account of the surface treatment, on account of the motifs, and also on account of the firing technique these people use, and the shapes also. So on the basis of that, archaeologists have identified these different cultures. And these 5 or 6 different regional cultures were identified. But around 2500 BC, these cultures were integrated into one, uniform culture. And that is called the Harpan Civilization. So here, I can, when I look at this particular picture, I believe that, perhaps, the concept of nation, was evolving. Because, this, they have integrated the culture over such a large area. And that area was not small, in fact, almost double the size of Pakistan today. Almost, a 2 million square kilometer area. So over this area, they have developed the uniform culture. Maybe you can call this as a nationhood or maybe even empire. But the empires are, the impression that we have is that empires are made by forceful means, by conquering the surrounding region. But in this case, perhaps this is the only example in the world history where this type of nationhood or empire was created by peaceful means. I will show that how that that was done by the people. You can say that we have discovered nearly 2,000 Harappan settlements so far. More than 150 sites have been excavated, but not every site was not a city or town. Like today, there were maybe big cities. We have identified 5 big cities. Then there were maybe towns, and there were different categories. There were large number of maybe farming settlements. There were Harappan ports, and different kinds of maybe manufacturing centers also. So this was the composition of the settlement that we find. And the culture flourished mainly between 2 rivers. One is the Indus River, and the other one, of course, is called, today it is called Ghaggar and Hakra, but that is the Vedic Saraswati River. So between these 2 rivers, and let me tell you that Vedic Saraswati was more, maybe more attractive for the Harappans, because we find nearly 2/3 of the settlements located in the Saraswati basin, and remaining sites are in the Indus basin. So this was the area of the Harappans. Then when it comes to the understanding of the transformation in the basic technologies, I think this is the site of Rakhigarhi, which I excavated, has given us very solid indication in this particular respect. Now what you are seeing here is the part of the settlement that was excavated, and you can see the thickness of the settlement. It was 23 meter thick deposit, and in this 23 meter thick deposit, we had 2 phases of the Harappan culture. One is the early phase from 6000 BC to 2600 BC. We have proper dates for that. And in the upper part was the most flourishing phase of the Harappan culture, that is called the Harappan Civilization. So that was from 2600 BCE to 2000 or 1900 BCE. And when we excavated, this particular section has given the complete history of the site, how the people have evolved, how the culture has evolved, how the basic scientific maybe disciplines have evolved, how the crafts have developed over the period. So this particular site has given us good example and evidence in fact in this particular respect. Now there is another site called Birana, which was excavated by Archaeological Survey of India, and this site is hardly 20 kilometers away from the site of Rakhigarhi. Now why I want to show this particular site? This site was excavated in fact maybe in 2000, 2001 by the Archaeological Survey of India, and they started getting very early dates for this. As I say that the beginning of the phase here was dated to around 6000 BCE. But the whole world was not ready to accept this particular date, because this was done by the Indians. They accepted the dates from Mehergarh without any raising any controversy, because that was excavated by European, whereas this site was excavated by Indians. They say that maybe there is some contamination happening there. Maybe you people are not good excavators. So all the different comments started. So we did not react, in fact. We took that as a challenge. And then, I excavated, 3 more sites. One is called Girawat, other one is Farmana, and the site of Rakhigarhi. And the Archaeological Survey of India also excavated 2 more sites. So now, we have 6 sites in that region, which are produced consistently the same dates. So now we are quite sure that, the beginning of the Harappan culture is going back to 6000 BCE. We do not have such an early date so far, in Pakistan, in the Sindh, province. But we are not claiming that, the origin has happened here and people have moved to Sindh region. We are not claiming. It is quite likely that, maybe still early sites are also there, which are not been maybe, tapped or excavated by the local archaeologists. But here, at this particular site, they found beautiful, evidence of the, structural growth, the architectural growth, at this particular site. In the early stage, what you are seeing in fact here are the pits, the cluster of pits. And these are actually the dwellings. Each family own maybe 3 or 4, pits. That is a cluster. And the function of each one is different. Maybe the bigger one is used for maybe for sleeping purpose or living purpose. Then in one, we find maybe fireplace. Sorry. In one we find fireplace. Maybe some cylindrical ones were used for storage, etc. So that is how the activities were carried out. So this is how the begin. This is the modest beginning of the Harappan culture. In the next stage, and they are excavated underground intentionally. We call them as pit dwellings. We don't know why they have excavated, and the pits are not very deep. So maybe because in this region they are not getting long wood or long timber. So to give the height to the maybe roof, maybe they may have excavated underground. But in the next stage, they started living on the ground. You can see maybe part of the circular hut which is excavated. And there are post holes on all sides. So maybe there are superstructure on these huts also. So this is the second, in the second stage, we get this particular evidence. In the third stage, of course, the structures are proper, in Harappan tradition. They have started making these rectangular and square structures, and they have started manufacturing typical Harappan bricks now. That is in 1:2:3 ratio, or 1:2:4 ratio. That is the brick ratio that the Harappans. So this type of maybe, but in the third stage, the structures are small and just haphazardly located here and there. But in the fourth stage, you can see a modicum of planning now. There is a concept of street, a small street, big street, and structures located on both sides. So this comes in fact in the next stage. And in the last stage, the fully developed cities. This is not from the site of Rakhigarhi, but this is from the site of Mohenjo-daro. But that shows in fact the gradual growth of the city. The city has not really evolved or come into existence suddenly, but there is a gradual growth. So this growth, in fact, they developed this architecture, and over the period, in fact, they did a lot of experiment, and finally, they evolved these cities. And cities, one of the important component of the cities that they were fortified, and most of the cities were divided into 2 parts. We call this citadel and lower town. This is the only city, the city of Dholavira, which was divided into 3 parts. But the component, this particularly the storage, the fortification component is very important. And you can see now they have used locally available material for the construction purpose. So most of the sites, most of the construction in Gujarat, particularly where the stone is available, they have used this stone. And at Dholavira, you can see that the stone is cut in the in the shape of brick. So that is how the construction were undertaken by these people. And this is a fully evolved city. I think all of you if you want to understand how the cities are built, what we learn from this particular site is that the planners, the town planners, can learn how to build a modern city. And I will give the example how that that was done by the Harappans. But we do get a lot of evidence in this well planned cities. The fortification fortification for each and every segment, within the settlement. And the fortification is very strong. At Dholavira, the width of the fortification is almost 18 meters on top, and it is almost 25 meters at the base. So why, the Harappans have built such a strong fortification? Still we are debating, because they did not have any enemies, because the contemporary population would not have, posed any threat to the Harappans. At Mohenjo-daro, perhaps, this fortification was meant to protect the city from the flood, but we do not know why they have built such a thick city at the thick fortification at the site of Dholavira. And recently, some work was done, scientific work was done by scientists from NIO, National Institute of Oceanography, Goa, and they found, thick heap of sand both inside and outside the fortification wall. And that heap was, accumulated at one go, not gradually, but at one go. So probably, there was a threat of tsunami to the settlement, and therefore, to protect the settlement, probably, this is just a hypothesis, they must have, raised such a strong fortification at the site. Then you can see, how perfect these are the main streets, east-west and north-south running west, main streets. And they perfectly, there's a crossing of this. There's no encroachment. This is a part of the fortification. They also have, probably, when, the citadel part was probably, well fortified. And before entering, probably, there were some security guards, because you can see two rooms, before the entry to the citadel part. So probably, this was, checked. And then, of course, entry was not straight. One has to, climb the flight of steps, turn to right, and then, turn to left and enter the city. So this is the kind of evidence we find. Also, you can see some of the polystone pillars. Now, before the discovery of these polystone pillars at Dholavira, most of the historians believe that this particular art, the polystone, pillar art, has come from Persian Gulf, or has come from Persia, probably from, this, maybe around 3rd century BC from Persepolis. And then, of course, we adopted, the Mauryans adopted. But now the antiquity of this is going back to the Harappans. So probably we developed this, and perhaps, it was, the knowledge was transferred in part or spread to different parts of the world. These are some of the components that have been found in the excavation. These are the stone pillar bases and also part of the pillars that they excavated. What is interesting that you can see some of the, the well-planned cities that were excavated. And we don't find, large, within the Harappan region, we don't find that the Harappans have built very large public architecture, like pyramids, for example, in Egypt, or big ziggurats or the temples. But what we see is that, there are some public buildings, but we call them as utility public buildings. Fortification is probably one of the public buildings. And also we find some, this type of maybe public bath and the granary. So these are the utility, useful for the common people. So they were built by the Harappans. Also, the concept of the door frame and also the windows was conceived properly by the Harappans. And that we are continuing this particular tradition all over South Asia. Initially, we thought that, Harappans did trade only in the luxury goods, small, maybe goods. But now it is becoming clear that the Harappans also did trade in fact in the building material. And this is scientifically established. Now, this is the stone is available at Dholavira. We have also found stone at some pillar bases at Mohenjo-daro and also at Harappa. And, when they were examined scientifically, it was revealed that, this stone has gone from Dholavira to this, different cities. So they also did this trade in fact in the building material. And see the layout of the modern village or the settlement in that region, exactly the replica of the Harappan layout. So we have not forgotten this particular tradition. The other thing that is Harappans, Harappans are the first in fact to develop proper cities. Even though we hear about the cities in Mesopotamia or Egypt, they were different. In fact, they were not for the common people. But the cities developed by the Harappans, they were for the common people. So that is one important contribution that the Harappans have made to the history of world. And the other important contribution of the Harappans is that they have taught the world what we call as the scientific construction method. Today it is called English bond. And this particular concept was developed by the Harappans. Even today, this technology is used almost all over the world. When we are constructing the brick wall, one line of the brick is kept horizontal, next is vertical. So that is a method. It is called English bond. But this is almost 5,000 years old in India, whereas Britishers were not really aware about this technology till 14th century. So still we called it as English bond, but actually it should be called as the Harappan bond. So this is one knowledge that is spread almost all over the world. We don't know whether the Harappans knew different sciences, but from the evidence certainly we can say that some sciences were properly developed. Mathematics, for example, was perhaps properly developed because they have made these type of the measuring instruments with marking. So they are proper, they have some denominations. So this is the base of the measuring system that the world has developed. So that comes from India. These are some of the instruments excavated from different sites. The concept of well was also introduced by the Harappans. This is the earliest evidence anywhere in the world. They brought clean water inside the settlement, and they developed the technology for building these wells. There are some wells, particularly at Dholaivira, if you go, there's one Harappan well which is still being used by the people. People are drawing water from that. And if you see the wells in Haryana, exactly they are modeled on the Harappan wells, same type of construction method. So this is one important knowledge that was developed by the Harappans. Now you'll feel that you are seeing at a modern bathroom. Harappans, two important components were introduced by the Harappans again for the first time in the world. One is a bathroom inside the structure, and the other one is toilet. Not only they have constructed a bathroom. This is the evidence from the site of Kalibanga, which was excavated by Honorable B.B. Lal, maybe in 1960s. And this looks so modern because the Harappans also have made these terracotta tiles, and they're decorated ones. So probably this decoration of tiles concept was borrowed by by the people all over the world from the Harappans. The commode system, we always thought that it has come from the West, but actually this is the this is the earliest evidence of commode system found anywhere in the world. Not only the commode system here, but by the side of commode you can see a big jar, and inside the big jar there is a small lota inside. In today's toilet, you have the same concept, not only in the villages but also in the cities. So this tradition was introduced by the Harappans and has continued till today without any change. Also, one of the important component that they introduced was the very important, well-planned, impeccable drainage system. So we find two, in fact, one open drainage which was attached to the bathrooms, and we also find closed drainage which was usually attached to the toilets. And what you see, in fact, at number of sites, you can see the network of the drainage. The right-hand side evidence is that evidence comes from the site of Lothal when it was excavated. So that shows that almost every household had this particular system, and they had the network of the drainage, and that network of the drainage was attached to the main drainage line. At Harappa, they have excavated the main drainage line. So the network was attached to this, and the main drainage line was taken outside the city wall and emptied somewhere, making sure that there is no dirty water spreading within the settlement. And because of this, and also, I think this is the photograph of the modern village in Rakhigarhi. I think, as I mentioned that, overall plan is more or less Harappan. But, we are not learning something from history. So see the drainage pattern which is spreading in the street today. Not only this, but Harappans were the first to introduce the mechanism for disposing of garbage. And what you are seeing here, these are the, the garbage pits built in, maybe mud bricks or burnt bricks all along the main streets, making sure that, that the garbage is disposed of, in particular place only. So the Harappans maintain such a, cleanliness. Unfortunately, we have lost that in between. I will also tell that, why we have lost that particular knowledge. But, we did the study of the skeletal remains from Birana, the site which I excavated. And some Korean scientists were working with us to understand the pathology during the Harappan times. And at the end of the study, they were so disappointed because they could not find major disease prevalent in the Harappan population. And that was because they maintained very clean cities and very hygienic cities because of that. See, this is always referred to as the public bath. But I think this is the concept of the swimming pool, because all the the features of the swimming pool are present in fact here. You can see that there are rooms on all sides. So that in the modern swimming pool also, we take bath. In fact, we clean ourselves first and then enter into the swimming pool. That system is there. And very close, you can see this is the swimming pool, and there's a well here. So they were drawing water from that well and periodically changing from this particular swimming pool. So very a well-established system was developed by the Harappans. Then we can talk a little bit about the trade aspect. See, Harappans had a lot of disadvantages. They did not have the basic resources that we have identified from the archaeological sites. Most of the resources were outside the Harappan region. But what Harappans did, in fact, they established very good cordial relation with the contemporary population outside the Harappan region. They had the technology with them. They started importing raw material from them, and they made a lot of finished goods and supplied to the same people from whom they acquired the raw material. That is how the Harappans started generating wealth, and that wealth was used for the developmental purpose. So I always give the example of Japan, in fact. I don't say that Japanese have learned directly from us, but I have seen, at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the destruction that happened during the Second World War. And nobody in the world believed that Japan will rise again. But Japan rose again, in fact, within 15 years. And in 1964, they showcased the tremendous development that they made, the economic development that they made. And the system that Japanese followed was exactly the same as the Harappans. Japan also had technology with them. They did not have sufficient raw materials, so they started importing raw material from India, China, these developing countries. And they started manufacturing large amount of finished goods and supplied to the same countries from whom they acquired the raw material. So there is something to learn from the people like Harappans, and this knowledge has traveled maybe to different parts of the world. They introduced the bullock cart system for communication purpose, and the modern bullock carts are exactly the same. Also, they were the first to develop the maritime trade contacts. And we have identified, the trade routes of the Harappans, both land routes as well as the marine routes of the Harappans. And this is how the Harappans, developed the trade network. And at some stage, they realized that, the hinterland trade is not giving them sufficient revenue. So they thought of going beyond hinterland, and they started developing contact with Oman, with Bahrain, with Persian Gulf, and further with Mesopotamians and the Egyptians. And the evidence that we have clearly indicates that the trade was beneficial to the Harappans, because a lot of things were exported by the Harappans in Mesopotamia and Egypt. In relation to that, we find very small things coming from that side. So Harappans were the Pakka businessmen, and they use this particular technique for the developmental purpose. I always call the Gujaratis and the Sindhi the descendants of the Harappans, because they are following the same system today. And Honorable Prime Minister is no wonder that he's giving so much stress on the international trade. Not only the trade, but they developed the infrastructure for carrying out this maritime trade. So at Lothal, they developed this this structure that you see here. That was the first, earliest man-made dockyard anywhere in the world. And this dockyard was meant for building ships, also for repairing ships. And then sometimes that was also used as a port also. So this was dockyard cum port at Lothal. And it is here that we are developing one of the biggest national maritime museums in the world. So, see, when this was discovered, again, there are a lot of controversy. Some European scholars say, started saying that this could be a sweetwater tank, but there is no need because there is a river nearby. So this is a river and port, and the sea level was quite slightly higher. Today, Lothal is around 40 kilometers away from the sea, but during the Harappan times, maybe it was close to the sea. Not exactly on the seashore, but maybe close to the sea. And during the high tidal period, maybe the water used to come off the site and go back. So there is some evidence which clearly indicates that this was a dockyard. They showed this. S.R. Rao was the excavator from the Archaeological Survey of India, and after the excavation, he invited the experts from Indian Navy, and without telling them what he thinks about this particular structure, he wanted to get their opinion. And after seeing this particular structure, and after seeing this particular platform, you can see the sloping platform that was excavated at that time, which is attached to this particular structure. So that is called wharf, for required for sliding goods up and down. So after seeing this, the Indian Navy experts say that the only function of this structure could be a dockyard. And then, of course, these NIO scientists also did some work at this particular, and scientifically it is established that this is the earliest man-made dockyard in the world. And this dockyard was used for various purposes. You can see when it was fully maybe a living city that time, this is how it must have looked like. But you can see that Harappans have built two kinds of boats. One is the plank boat made of wooden plank, and the other one is called the reed boat, which is made of thick grass. So these are the two boats which were developed by the Harappans. We always thought that this boat concept or the boat building technology has come to India from the Romans, but now it is becoming clear that this is the indigenous technology that was developed. And when I traveled to Mohenjo-daro, I could see that exactly same boats are being are in use in the Indus River there. And even in Oman and Bahrain, they are still building these reed boats. So, and these boats were used for long distance travel, because inside the boat you can see a house and also birds. So birds are required in fact to locate, because they did not have the modern compass system. So they are required for locating land nearby, and house is required because you are traveling maybe sometimes overnight. So this system was developed by the Harappans. I come to the site of Dholavira again, because I say that that one can learn so much from this particular site. See, this particular city was developed in the extreme desert part. Even today, of course, it is desert. And during the Harappan times also, this was all desert, because we have studied the climatic condition there also. And the Harappans knew that there is a dearth of water. There is no water available in this particular region. Why they had to develop? There are 4 or 5 cities they develop in a line, because they have developed these cities on the trade, important trade route coming, between Saurashtra and Sindh. Saurashtra has a lot of natural resources, and Sindh had the settlements where the goods can be manufactured. So because of that, they had to develop this particular city. So Harappans did not just come and establish the city here or come and started settling. What they did, they studied the geography and geology of this particular region, and then they decided to establish the city between 2 rivers. One is called Manar, and the other is called Mansar. And in the desert part, you can see that on both the rivers they placed series of check dams. And in the desert part, there is whenever there is rainfall, these rivers get flash floods. This is what the photograph I took when there was rain in that region. And then the Harappans have arrested the water by adopting this particular system, and they have diverted the entire water inside the settlement. They have not really allowed any drop of water to escape from this. And inside the settlement, in case the water comes in huge quantity, it might damage the city. So they have developed this particular system, in fact, the storm water drainage system. And this is the evidence of that. The water can be absorbed, in case it comes in huge volume, that can be absorbed, by this particular system. And then, of course, the water can go to the different underground water reservoirs that they have excavated. Some of the reservoirs are excavated in the solid rock also. How they have done, that is again a mystery. But these are the different underground water tanks that the Harappans have excavated and built of different shapes, sizes, and they're found in all the different parts of the settlement. The settlement was divided into 3 parts. You find that. And what they did, in fact, through the underground water channel system, these tanks were connected to each other. So in case, this can be, the water tanks can be filled up one after the other. So that is the system, they developed. And it is not that, Harappans could only survive, in this region, but they were constantly, evolving, developing in this, extreme climatic condition. And they made sure that in the desert part, they have kept running water inside the settlement. So when I talk to the Niti Ayog people, I say that, no, you should adopt this particular method, can be adopted even today. The Harappan knowledge system can be put to use. Today, the nearest town to Dholavira is Rapar, which is 110 kilometers. So between Rapara and Dholavira, there are hardly 4 or 5 villages. And people are not establishing settlements because of the dearth of water. But if this system is adopted, I think, the water problem can be resolved. We also, I showed you the development in their architecture, how the architecture has evolved. Similarly, we also noticed the development in the ceramic tradition also. Pottery was very important for the Harappans. So you can see that, this is the pottery that is found in the early level, in the lowermost levels, which is crude and handmade. And gradually the pottery was changing. In fact, the color was changing. They started using different techniques. In the second stage, they have used slow turntables for making pottery. And in the third stage, the classical pottery was evolved by the Harappans. And this pottery is made on fast wheel. So there is evidence of the gradual growth of this particular technology. So these are the beautiful, the classical Harappan pottery that the people develop, and perfectly fire above 750 degrees centigrade. So they could manage to develop or raise this this temperature to more than 750 in these type of kilns. These are the kilns in which the pottery was fired. So pottery was kept in the circular portion. It was closed, and through the fire chamber, they can put the fire. So fire can keep circulating inside, and the pottery can get perfectly fired. So this is a technology which was developed by the Harappans, perfect technology. As I mentioned that even today, people are making the same kind of pottery. But of course, the technology that is used today is not that advanced as the Harappans had. And we are trying to supply the same Harappan technology to the modern potters so that they can make their products better and they can have better value for their products. But what is interesting that you can see the exact same kind of pottery is being made and used by the people even today. If you keep one Harappan pot and one modern pot side by side, it will be difficult for you to identify which one is modern and which one is ancient. And they're using the same technology even today for making this. The women play a very important role. We tell our grandmothers and mothers, they tell the story of Thirsty Crow. The origin of this particular story goes back to the Harappans. So a lot of traditions were evolved, developed by the Harappans, and we are following that. They also started making these type of beads. These are the beads made of semi-precious stone. Carnelian, the red stone, is very common. And these beads had a greater demand in West Asia, particularly in Mesopotamia and Egypt. So they started making these beads on large scale, almost only exclusively for the export purpose. The long carnelian beads particularly, They are very rarely found in the Indian Harappan sites, but they are found in Mesopotamia and Egypt in good number, in fact. So they developed the technology for making these. They developed the technology for perforating these also. We have studied that technology also, and they also made some decorated carnelian beads. We call them as edge carnelian bead. So we have studied the technology of that. What kind of maybe material that was used for making this, and we are recreating that. At number of sites, we have the evidence of the manufacturing of these beads in the form of the beads in different stages of manufacture. We also have the tools that were used for the manufacturing in the form of this bead polisher, which you can see, and also the drills which are used for perforation purpose. Even today, in the Khamat region, there are some families who are making exactly the same kind of replicas of the Harappan beads in the same material, and the technology that they use is exactly the same Harappan technology. So that 5,000-year-old technology is being used, and these craftsmen, they make roaring business. Their products are sold all over the world, and they are making really good business. So there's a relevance of that. The Harappans also developed beautiful the art in the form of this. Again, you can see here the polished stone pillar, polished stone figurine. This is not Mauryan, but this is the Harappan, and then it has continued to the Mauryan period. These are the seals and ceilings. Some of them may have been used as a trademark. The concept of trademark was developed by the Harappans. We also have a lot of evidence of manufacturing of other crafts in the form of the shell bangles. You can see here, in some of the sites, we find the actual evidence of the manufacture of this craft. They also use a lot of stone tools, copper tools. And they had both, in fact, the simple technology that is being used even today, almost all over the South Asia, that is called the cold hammering technology, which is being used, and the Harappans use that. And also the complex technology, that is, the objects were made in mold, in fact, and they were cast in mold. So that is, these are the objects, which are cast in mold. And the best example of this is the so-called dancing figure found in bronze. So copper and bronze, these are the two important metals that the Harappans developed. Even they made the beads of silver and gold. Silver and gold was imported from maybe Iran, and they had the technology of making this. At number of sites, we have the evidence of manufacturing of these. You can see some of the excavated remains where the copper or the metal objects were made. And we have a lot of manufacturing evidence at different Harappan sites. Then the other important contribution that Harappans made to the history of the world is that they were the first to develop this the cotton fabric. Then also the printing technology was developed by the Harappans. The so-called priest king, on whose body we see the shawl-like garment. So there are painted decorations, in fact. So probably this technology was developed by the Harappans. They made indigo color. Indigo color had a lot of demand in Egypt, so they made for the export purpose. So we have the evidence of that. Then they also developed this wool fabric, then this silk fabric, and also the jute fabric. We have the evidence of that. So they are the pioneers in building all this. So we have studied them in how this they were developed by the Harappans. Then the tradition that was started by the Harappans, embroidery technique. So these beads, small tiny beads were used for embroidery purpose, and even today that tradition continues. It is believed that the modern weighing system is evolved from the Harappans. So these are some of the weights and the system that the Harappans developed. The Harappans developed this rotation of crop system, 2 crops in a year, because they wanted surplus amount of food grains to support the maybe different craftsmen in the society. And some of the delicacies that the Harappans introduced, for example, chicken tandoor comes from the Harappans. That is a delicacy introduced by the Harappans. We have the actual evidence of that. Then the Indian curry we have also established, we did some scientific study at the site of Farmana, and we found the ingredients of the Indian curry in a pot. So that the antiquity of Indian curry goes back to the Harappan times. And then we also thought that the food processing was started by the Europeans, but actually we have the earliest evidence of that. Cheese and paneer, they were made by the Harappans by using this type of perforated jars. So again, we have done the lipid profile, and we have understood the concept. Then the Namaste tradition, also this feeding bottle concept, that is very much Indian. We have the evidence of that. Even this, even though we don't know much about their education system during the Harappan times, probably they had well established, because what you are seeing, these are the writing tablets. When I was a child, in fact, I used this type of tablets. So this indicates that the Harappans had proper writing system, or maybe education system. Even you can see a tub in which a mother is giving birth to her child. The paid dog concept, and also the maybe some gamesman like maybe chess, etc., was introduced. We have the evidence of that. When I visited Harappa, I saw in the Harappa museum in Pune, I saw this cage made of terracotta by the Harappans. And when I came out, in fact, a man was holding bird in that cage, exactly same kind of cage. Just briefly, if I am not late, can I continue for more, some 15-20 minutes? So we always compare the Harappans with the Mesopotamians and the Egyptians, and they clearly had contact, of course, with that region. So this is the region of the Dilmun and Magan. This is Oman and Bahrain. The Persian Gulf region here. This Sumerian culture, and the Egyptian culture beyond that. So Egyptians, as I say, that they created this type of monumental architecture, the pyramids in Egypt, or this type of temples in Mesopotamia, and we thought that Harappans were inferior to the Egyptians and the Mesopotamians. But that is not the case. In fact, the Harappans were considered to be the best civil engineers in the contemporary world. Even the Mesopotamian text has talked about that. And but the Harappans were very, very practical people. There are two reasons why the Harappans have not created those type of monumental architecture. Because the Harappans had different system. They did not have the monarchical system. There's a clear-cut monarchical system present in Mesopotamia. You can see here. There's a representation of that. And everything that was, every development that happened, that was, around or for the royal families only, not for the common people. This is both in fact in Mesopotamia and also in Egypt. They had proper, this kingdom system, and it's well documented. Then, the Egyptians could build this type of architecture by using slavery. We don't find that evidence in the Harappan level. So they were very aggressive people. They had maintained, this strong army, both in Egypt and Mesopotamia. We have the evidence of the slavery, and also the evidence of the standing army in both, in fact. So they were so aggressive people. So because of that, because this different administrative system that these people had, we believe that the Harappans have some kind of democratic system, because some kind of panchayat system. There is no direct evidence for that, but whatever circumstantial evidence we have, on the basis of that we can make this particular statement. And they were peace-loving people. In fact, they developed these health sciences in the form of meditation. We have the evidence of that. And also yoga tradition. These are the actual terracotta figurines found in the Harappan level in different yogic posture. So that also indicates that the people were peace-loving, and they did not involve in any kind of violence. We don't have evidence of that. So because of that, and the people always thought that creating this type of monumental architecture is of no use for the common people. So whatever they did, in fact, was for the common people. It was done by the people, for the people, and that is the difference between the Mesopotamians and Egyptians. So ultimately, that knowledge which was developed by the Harappans, Now that was passed on from maybe generation to generation, and ultimately when we developed the earliest universities in the world, the first university to be developed was Takshila around 5th century BCE, and the next one is the city of the University of Nalanda. What you are seeing here are the remains of Nalanda. So here, this Indian knowledge system was taught to the students, and people, the records indicate that students from all over the globe, they used to come to learn Indian knowledge system. Then, finally, this who are the people who developed this? Briefly, I'll tell about this. This is the research, very important research we did at the site of Rakhigarhi. And if you want to know about the Harappan people, because there are two, opinions. One is that some say that the Harappans were local people. Some say that they came from outside. But scientifically, we had not established, which we had done in fact at the site of Rakhigarhi. This is the excavation I did in fact at the site of Farmana. One of my objectives was to extract DNA from the Harappan skeletal remains at Farmana. And this work was started in 2006. Suppose, if I had succeeded that time, I could have published the result in fact in 2010 and 11, and the results would have been same, because this research was published in 2019. There are some, who, commented that, perhaps this, result is published to please the BJP government, but that is not the case. We don't do that for any government. We were not prepared at Farmana, but then, we learned, the technique, in fact, from the Koreans, and they say that, you have to take proper precaution for, collecting the samples. Because the DNA is so sensitive, the modern DNA can get into ancient DNA easily. And, we took this precaution, the PPE kit was used by us, and all precaution to make sure that there is no contamination happening in the ancient skeletal remains. But in spite of that, when we started analyzing the data, we found the, some genes of the East Asian people in the Harappan population. And there was no way, because the Harappans never had contact with eastern part of Asia. So we started investigating how that has come. And then, we realized that, one of our students was from Korea, and he was excavating. So in spite of, taking this precaution, it got into ancient DNA. So sensitive. So all the excavations were done, in fact, by using this particular technique. Then, even the sampling was done, extensive sampling. These are the remains, in fact, we find. And, we find number of, pots inside. They contain food and water for the dead body. We also find a lot of jewelry along with this, their tools also. We did the sampling. One new technique that the Koreans have developed is called the paleoparasitology. In our human body, we have these, parasite eggs, even, in our body also. So when we die, this, the body disintegrates, but the eggs survive. So they extracted, this, the parasite eggs from some mummies in Korea, and they identified DNA from that. So we wanted to find, we want to use that technique here also. But because of the climatic condition, of course, these remains are not there. But then, we took all the precaution. We excavated nearly 62 burials, and the condition is so adverse for the preservation that we did not find the DNA in almost 61 burials. And this was the last. In fact, this is a lady luck for us. This is a skeletal remains of a 35-year-old Harappan woman. She was very beautiful because her features are very sharp. She was from a slightly affluent family, because you can see number of pots that shows her status. And we found, strong DNA from these. And initially, let me tell you that also, that the entire research was planned by the Indian archaeologists and scientists. In 2015 and 16, we had, we found the results of our analysis. And then I was about to publish. Then I realized that if I publish this data in 2015 and 16, only by Indian scholars, but the outsiders will always start raising doubts. They will say that you have not done this analysis or that analysis. So it is very difficult to accept your data. So what we did, in fact, we prepared 3 samples. One, of course, we analyzed. One samples we sent to Korean scientists with whom we are collaborating. and one sample set we sent to Harvard University. And we just told them that you just do the cross-checking for us. And after we got the complementary results from both these, we published that in 2019. And a lot of criticism was also happening at that time. But let me tell you that this particular research, you can see that there's one big organization called International Conference on Genomics. It's a very big organization. So they had identified 9 breakthrough researches in the world, and Rakhigarhi was one of them. And you can see the memento that they gave to us. So this is the this is the research that is identified and acknowledged by scientists all over the world. Only criticism that some of the Indian scholars, not scholars, I won't say that because they are not from the domain knowledge system. There are some maybe amateurs. In fact, they started saying that how come we can make generalization on the basis of one sample. But those who understand the population genomics, they should know that this is like testing rice, whether rice is cooked or not. You pick up one grain, so even if you find 100 samples, the result is going to be the same. So DNA is like that only. So this was the result. And in briefly I tell you that around 10,000 BCE, that is 12,000 years ago, there were hunter-gatherers. So they broke into 2 branches. One came to South Asia, one went to Iran. And the one which came to South Asia, their genes were getting mutated. And they form a distinct genes, what we call as ancient ancestral South Indian genes. So those genes were formed, and those same genes were found in fact in the Harappan population. And also we studied this samples from Iran and also from Central Asia, the contemporary samples. There is a site called Shari Sokta in Iran and Gonur in Turkmenistan. Both were contemporary to Harappans. The local archaeologists had excavated the site. They found a lot of Harappan material indicating this contact. So we studied the DNA of the people there also. And what was surprising, we found that we found the Harappan elements, genes, small percentage of genes present in the population of Iranians and the Central Asians, but not their genes in fact in the Harappan population. So this is very important. That means Harappans started going out first, and then there is a reciprocal movement happening after that. So that is the kind of evidence we get. Those who say that the Aryans came from outside, that is not true in fact. That we started going out first, and then people started coming in. And people have come, and they have moved to Indian subcontinent from time to time. But at every stage, they were absorbed in fact in the Indian society. At no stage our ancestry was broken or discontinued at any stage for last 10,000 years. So that shows in fact that all these hypotheses are wrong. We also analyze the modern samples, nearly 3,500 modern samples, and we intentionally included all the known linguistic and religious group in this particular study, from Afghanistan to whole of India. And what we found interesting that most of us from Andaman Nicobar to Ladakh and Kashmir, and from Afghanistan to Bengal, most of us are the descendants of the Harappans, because we are carrying forward, inheriting the Harappan genes, which are in the range of 25 to 30%. That means we are the descendants from that. And the remaining are maybe mixed, in fact, maybe 2% maybe West Asians, 2% Central Asians, maybe 3% maybe Europeans, like that. So a lot of mixing was happening, and that is reflected in our study. And there were a lot of communities around Harappan region also. And we have studied in fact how this movement must have happened, how the Harappans people started moving to different parts. So from say northwest, they first went to the Ganga basin, mid Ganga basin. There is a site called Lahura Deva in near Gorakhpur. So that site has the evidence of 6,000 BC early life. Then from there they came to the Mewat region of Rajasthan around 4,500 BCE, and then around 3,000 BCE they spread. The Harappan elements started spreading all over maybe all over India. That is how it started. So we also have scientifically, so most of the linguistic group, even religious group today, except these Tibeto-Burman, I think they are all they have got the uniform genes, so they are descendants. Then you will say that how come that there is a difference in the appearance or the complexion, and the complexion variation has nothing to do with the genes. In fact, it has to do with maybe the climatic condition, the geographical condition, food habit, and with whom these people were interacting more. In fact, mixing was happening with whom more. So people from the southern part, they are more in fact mixing with the Southeast Asian people and also with the African people, whereas people from the northern part have more mixing of the Iranians and the Central Asians. Because of that, we find some variation. And also we scientifically also we have shown in fact how Harappan people look like for the first time at Rakhigarhi. So we need this complete data. So we have recreated, reconstructed the 3D features of the Harappan population. And we have done, this matrix data was collected when we excavated the data. Then we also need inner anatomical data, which was generated through this scientific way. And then, of course, step by step, the reconstruction was done. And now you can see that, the Harappans and the modern people, they look exactly the same. So there is a continuity, in fact, not only in the cultural aspect, not only in the genetic aspect, but also in the, complexion also. And finally, why the Indian law system, has not continued till today. And you can from this, see this statement that you see here by the Lord Macaulay, who established the modern education system in fact in the country. He introduced a completely new system. Some historians say that this is not his statement. Some historians say this is his statement. But even if it's not, they have followed that one. The most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history and knowledge system. And the colonial rulers did the same thing. So they kept aside the traditional method, traditional education system. And because of that, there is a discontinuity in the continuation of the Indian knowledge system. But now, in fact, because of the new policy, new NEP 2020, I'm sure that we'll be able to, overcome that problem, and maybe after a few years, we'll come back. India became Vishwaguru because of the Indian law system, and maybe there is a scope, in fact, to become again Vishwaguru when we full-fledged establish our education system. We did a lot of, lot of work for the awareness program. Also, we do, and also we also do a lot of programs to educate the people. And to make them understand the importance of, so that I am of the opinion that no government organization can really protect our huge heritage. We have heritage in every nook and corner. So unless there is participation of the local people in the preservation and protection, perhaps this will not be protected. But people will participate only when we make them understand the importance and significance of the Indian law system. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I have taken more time.
Thank you, sir. It was indeed an insightful talk. The information you presented enlightened us on the topic. Now we shall have a brief question and answer session.
No, they used to bury the dead bodies. That is true, and that tradition is quite old, from 7000 BC till almost 2nd century BC. We find this particular tradition happening in the in South Asia, and after 2nd century BC only this cremation system started. So maybe it is almost 2500 years old cremation system in the country. But earlier, all the people used to bury, dead bodies. And it was good for us because of that, we could extract DNA. Otherwise, we could not have really. So that is a boon in disguise for archaeologists.
So what is the typical size of Harpan city?
Harappan?
City, what is the typical
It
area?
varies, in fact. The biggest city now is Rakhigarhi, which is roughly 550 hectare in size. It's huge, more than almost half the size of Delhi.
Oh, okay.
And this, the next biggest city is Mohenjo-daro, which is around 300 hectare. Third is around 200 hectare, is around Harappa, is around 200 hectare. Rakhigarhi is, this Dholavira is small, in fact, around 70 hectare. So it varies, in fact, from city to city. No uniform size as such.
And the second question regarding the spice and the biological stuff, they must be decomposed, right? How do you identify that they use the same sort of spice that we are using the modern day? Spice, this masala.
Yeah, no. What happens, when something is cooked, in fact, in the earthen pot, then some elements, get stuck into the, body of the pot.
So it's fossilized or something?
Not fossilized. Maybe in the form of, we disintegrate small particles. And those particles, sometimes remain intact. So we, there's a technique called residue analysis. We, scrape that portion. We analyze that. And we did that, and then we found this, remains of that.
Absorbed on it.
Absorbed in that, yes. And the other method is that, when they use some, maybe something to pound, for grinding this purpose. So some small particles also get into the, grinding stone.
Okay.
So we, extract that also. It is called, starch grain analysis. That also was done to establish this. So this is a most scientific way by which we could. And plus, we also found some charred remains of wheat and barley and other crops. So we have used both, in fact, the physical remains as well as the invisible remains also for that. No, the South Indian, the sites are of different periods. And, some of the scientific methods that we use to get information about, different aspects or different passages of the culture, that is not widely used, in fact, in the country. So we are now advocating that, they should use, this type of scientific methods, so that, because the data that we get is very small. And if we can extract as much information as possible, and through the analysis, and perhaps we'll be able to get more information. The method is same, excavation method is same. Only thing that how much you do take this analysis part and scientific aspect you do, that is important. No, so far we have the the DNA only from one ancient skeletal remains so far. So we are trying to, because one we can generalize, of course, but if you want to understand maybe different groups within the site of Rakhigarhi also, because such a big city, there may be different groups also. So we are collecting more samples from Rakhigarhi. Then maybe people, the settlements are also found in Rajasthan, Gujarat up to Maharashtra. So there may be different groups in that region also. So we are collecting samples from different sites. And then we want to try to understand the overall the composition of population during the Harappan times. So this is just the beginning, in fact. We have to pick up from there now.
In one of the pictures you showed that a manufacturing unit of, I think, bangles.
Yes. Shell bangles.
Yeah, the shell bangles. So I would assume that if someone had to leave that place to settle somewhere else, they would have taken all their belongings with them. If they're left there preserved as it is, it means that they would have to abandon it.
No, see, most of the bangles that you see, they're all damaged. They're not complete one.
Okay.
So maybe the debitage, while manufacturing a lot of maybe waste material so far are resulted. So that is thrown in the garbage. Suppose the bangle is broken, maybe damaged, they will not use it. In fact, maybe they they will keep it there. So that those types of things are found only. Otherwise, most of the things are carried, when they are moving from one place to another place, they always carry. And because of that, we get very few copper objects in the Harappan levels. Because, they are reused, in fact, they are recirculated, used again and again. That does not mean that, there was a scarcity of copper objects. There were, in fact, they had a lot of, availability of the copper material. But because of this, we find very few objects, in fact, in the settlement. But in case of, these other objects, if they're broken and damaged, they will simply throw in the garbage. And for archaeologists, garbage is very important because it is here we get, most of the material.
Sir, you showed some pits in streets, where it looked like the well that you showed earlier. How do we know that those were used for garbage disposal and not for storing water?
No, because for storing water, if you want to make pits like that, you will not use mud mortar for that purpose.
Okay.
Because at Lothal, they have used what is called bitumen. That is tar-like substance for binding the bricks so that water does not percolate.
Okay.
So in this case, they were not used. And they are not very deep, in fact. They are not wells.
Yeah,
hardly,
no,
yes.
I saw that.
And inside also they have made beautiful
and it was
floor.
airy, right?
Yes.
That walls.
And
walls.
also they have given different shapes also, for maybe aesthetic, purpose.
Okay.
But that system was in place. That is important.
Okay.
What kind of roofing they would have used?
Roof like today, in fact, they are flat roofs because we get, we don't get complete roofs as such, but sometimes we get the, maybe fragments of the roof. So we know that they have used a lot of grass and then mud on top of that. So that is, yeah. So that is how, even today, this type of roofs are made today.
Sir, and what do we know about the linguistics and language, how it has evolved over the...
It's a guesswork only. We don't know much about, why this particular Aryan invasion theory was developed. The only evidence that they used was that, they thought that the Indo-Aryan language was developed somewhere, Indo-European, and then it started coming to India maybe around between 2000 and 1500 BC. And perhaps, the Aryans came here and then they brought the language with them. But still, we do not know much about, the origin of the language, where exactly it happened, and also when it happened. We do not have evidence for that. But my, as far as the Harappans are concerned, I believe that they spoke in maybe early form of Sanskrit, because there is no evidence for that. This is just my, my guesswork. Because, most of the traditions that they introduce have continued till today. Why not language? So language also must have continued, from Harappans till today. So that is a guesswork. Of course, we don't have clue for that yet.
Many communities still they bury, they don't cremate. Is there any connectivity between the Harappan culture and the South Indians existing today?
Maybe, there are some people who have just, kept that tradition alive. But that is very small. In Northeast particularly, they still have that, that tradition, continuing. So probably, that, in some communities that tradition has continued without any break. In some communities, this tradition was broken at some stage and then they have introduced different. I think, this is just, I think there were maybe different groups in the society. Maybe a particular group may have decided to continue the tradition. The rest may have decided to discontinue the tradition. So this is just a hypothesis we can make. Yeah, right. Now, even today, we excavated some sites in the Deccan region. See, we excavated some sites in Deccan region, and there, maybe that is around 4,000 years old, and we found that the feet of the persons were cut off intentionally. So we had no idea why that was done. But then, this tradition is there in Goa. When the pregnant women die, their feet are cut off so that they don't turn into ghosts and come back. So that is a tradition, maybe, that is a belief, which must have been quite old.
In the interest of time, we'll confine to one last question.
Actually, you talked about the skeletons which were about before 2000 BCE. How does it decompose?
No, the bones,
It
see,
hasn't-
bones have not, damaged much. Bones have survived. And, only the flesh and, the, muscles, they have gone. They have disintegrated. And what happens, after some, maybe the bones will survive. But, they will become maybe hollow from inside after certain age. And then that will be filled in with mud. And then it will turn into fossil. So that process takes almost 10,000 years. Anything which, which is older than 10,000 years becomes fossils. And for 10,000 years, these bones have remained as it is. Yeah, please let him come. You are asking.
The only alternative is the Indo-European migration should have happened from India. In which case, do we have any archaeological trail corroborating to that? We do this genetic trail that you mentioned till Central Asia. Is it corroborated by archaeology?
Yeah, very strongly at both the sites, at Gunur in Turkmenistan, and also at Shari Sokhta in Iran. Both the sites are contemporary to the Harappans, and they have found a lot of Harappan material there also. Harappan seals, Harappan pottery there. So archaeologically, it was proved that there was a strong connection between these two regions. Now, and we don't have such a evidence coming from that part. Even archaeologically also, we don't have evidence. What things have come from that part? So certain things must have come, but we have not found the evidence for that. And then this is supporting evidence that genetic is now, we are getting the genes, the Harappan genes present in their population, but not their genes present in the Harappan population. So that shows that gradually Harappan people must have started going that word.
Also, does the time period of these migrations fit into the...
Yeah, exactly. Same period, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for addressing the queries placed by members of the audience. I request Ranjit Kumar Nandaji to present a token of gratitude and appreciation to our chief guest. Thank you, Professor Ranjit Kumar Nanda. I would like to invite Jeeva Keshavji to deliver the vote of thanks.
I would like to register our sincere thanks and gratitude to our chief guest, Dr. Vasant Shinde ji, for coming to our platform and delivering an extensive lecture, and it enhanced our understanding on the Harappan civilization and the lifestyle and how we have evolved over time. Thank you very much, ji. And I would also like to thank all the faculty members, residents, students, and the entire IITM fraternity for joining us today on this auspicious occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeeva Keshavji. And we conclude this event with that, and we hope to see all of you in our next event very soon. Sir? Oh yeah. So we have come to the end of the program, but this program won't be complete without singing our national anthem. I would request all of you to sing the anthem with us.
मनादिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विदाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल वंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्छल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गादा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विदाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे. Thank you everyone.